get started, let me check my audio real quick. But these last few days in sports have been real entertaining. And I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that in a little bit. Let me just check my audio real quick. Let me see. Alright, so audio is good. I wanna go ahead. Give me 1 second. Let me close my door. Give me 1 second. Alright, let me go ahead and check the audio one more time. Let me see. Give me 1 second, just checking the audio. Alright, so audio is good. I wanna go ahead. Sorry if y'all hear if y'all hear my audio repeating in the background. My page on my browser is loading. Okay. Alright, sorry about that. So first of all, I want to start off with the Chargers versus Patriots game. I did not expect the Patriots to put a whipping on the Chargers like they did. The Chargers, I thought, were the better team. I thought they had more talent than the Patriots, but apparently Brady is not going to suck until he just maybe passes out on the field, or you're going to have to bury this guy on the field because he's showing no signs of slowing down. This dude, Brady. Now, they did have a big game from their running back, Sony Michel. The receivers were, getting some type of separation, and Brady was getting the ball where it needed to be. But still, Brady is, if I'm right, Brady is 40. And they just put on a whooping against the Chargers. Now, the Chargers did come back later in the game, but the game was pretty much already over by then. The Patriots had scored 14 points in the first. The Chargers scored 7. Then the Patriots scored 21 in the second. The Chargers scored 0. Then the third and the fourth, the Patriots scored 3. And then the third and the fourth, the Chargers scored 7 and 14. So the game was already pretty much over by then. So the game might look a bit closer than it really was, but the game was not close at all. Brady had an awesome game. He was 34 completions, 44 attempts, 343 yards, averaged about 8 yards per throw, 1 touchdown, and he had a QBR of 87.2. Brady is not really known to throw the ball down the field. He's always kind of been a dipping dunk guy, but he was, throwing it a little bit further than usual. Like I said, he was averaging about 8 yards per attempt. No interceptions. Sony Michel had 24 carries for 129 yards. He was averaging about 5 yards per carry, and he had 3 touchdowns. James White and Julian Edelman had monster games. Edelman had 9 receptions, 151 yards with 13 targets. James White had 15 receptions, 97 yards with 17 targets. And then Philip Dorsett, 4 receptions, 41 yards. Now Gronk only had 1 reception, 1 yard. Gronk is kind of, as we can see, he's kind of at the end of his dominance. He's always injured a lot. He's starting to, he's been slowing down, but you're starting to notice it a bit more. But I wouldn't be surprised if Gronk had a big game in these AFC Championship, or if they make it to the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a big game in the Super Bowl as well, because he definitely is a Hall of Famer, I believe. And Hall of Famers, even when they're at the end of their careers, tend to still have breakout performances, especially when it's needed. Gilmore had 1 interception. And besides that, it was just a display of dominance by the Patriots, and I definitely did not expect that. Um, the Chargers, they couldn't get the pass game going. They couldn't get the run game going. Melvin Gordon only had 9 carries, 15 yards, and Phillip Rivers only had 25 completions for 51 attempts, 331 yards, averaged about 6.5 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. But again, those touchdowns came at the end of the game, and when the game was pretty much over, and he had a QBR of 64, which is it's not bad, but it's not very good. He managed to spread the ball out quite a bit, but again, a lot of those stats were at the end of the game. They did have a fumble, and it just the Patriots showed up, and they do what the Patriots do. Brady came in, did what he does, and Bill Belichick put together a scheme, which he seems to always do, in these big games. Yeah, they had the Deflategate. Yeah, they had the camera situation, Spygate, but you can't deny that this team is one of the most dominant teams and franchises that we ever seen in the NFL. Despite how you may feel about them personally. Moving on to the Eagles and the Saints. If you ask me, I thought the Eagles were going to win this game because they were up 14-0 in the first quarter, and I pretty much thought it was over. But um, there was a big interception by I'm trying to think of his name. Marshawn Lattimore. He had 2 big interceptions. The first one he caught, I think it was on Zach Ertz. Nick Foles threw the ball a bit short, and that was kind of the game changer for the Saints. He also had another interception that slipped through the hands of Alshon Jeffrey, and he wound up catching it, and it wound up being a big play for the New Orleans Saints. I think if he wouldn't have thrown that, if the ball wouldn't have slipped through Jeffrey's hand, I believe that the Eagles were going to come down the field and win that game. But definitely a bad play by Jeffrey and a big play to catch that ball by Marshawn Lattimore. Um, Drew Brees, 28 completions, 38 attempts, 301 yards. He threw an interception on the first play of the game, which is crazy. He averaged about 8 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, 1 interceptions. He had a 65.8 QBR, which is okay. It's not bad. They kind of got the run game going. Then again, they kind of didn't. They had 16 carries, 71 yards by Kamara. Mark Ingram had 9 carries, 53 yards. Taysom Hill had a big 4-down punt conversion and some other big plays. Michael Thomas had a monster game with 12 receptions, 171 yards, and 16 targets. Drew Brees fumbled the ball twice, but we managed to recover those, which were really big. He did. Marshawn Lattimore did come up big with those 2 interceptions, which were definitely needed. Will Lutz, he missed a big field goal down the stretch, but he did make 2 of them early on, which were good. But if you're the Eagles, you definitely upset with how this game ended because Alshon Jeffrey, aka Mr. Reliable, if you ask me, if they could have got the ball to anybody, it would have been him. And it just was very unfortunate that their Mr. Reliable didn't show up when needed. But Nick Foles, 18 completions, 31 attempts, 201 yards, 6.5 average per attempt. He wasn't really throwing it too far down the field. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, even though that last interception by Alshon Jeffrey, when it slipped through his hands, wasn't really Nick Foles' fault. And Nick Foles had a QBR of 49.6, which is pretty bad. They didn't really get the running game going. They had 10 carries, 33 yards by Wendell Smallwood. Alshon Jeffrey had an okay game, 5 receptions, 63 yards. Zach Ertz, 5 receptions, 50 yards. Um, um, and they did have that interception by Crayvon LeBlanc. And they they all in all, the Eagles played a pretty solid game. It's just that that interception was the game changer. They had two interceptions that were game changers, but even with that one interception that Nick Foles threw short, they were still in the game. They held the Saints to 0 points in the first quarter, and then they held them to 10 points in the second quarter, but they didn't score in the second quarter. And then in the third quarter, they had the Saints to 7 points, but again they didn't score. And again they held the Saints to 3 points in the fourth quarter, but again they didn't score. The Eagles overall played a really solid game. They just managed to they couldn't score in the second half. Even in the second quarter they couldn't score, and that just you can't do that against the Saints. Eventually, you have to put up some type of points. If they would have scored 3 points in the second half, I mean the second quarter, 3 points in the third quarter, and 3 points in the fourth quarter, they probably would have won that game. Because that right there, that's 17, 20, that's 23, and the Saints still have 20 points. The Eagles wound up winning that game. But they didn't, and the Saints are going on to face the Rams in the playoffs, which I think is going to be a really exciting game. Moving on to James Harden, this dude went ahead and dropped 57 points. Um, this dude is unbelievable. Let me go ahead and check my audio one more time. All right, audio is good. Sorry if y'all hear the dual audio at one time, but James Harden went ahead and dropped 57 against the Memphis Grizzlies. This dude is putting on one of those dominant performances like Kobe did back in the day. I think it was 2008. Kobe just was going off for 40-point games, 50-point games. I think 2008 or 2007 is the year he had that 81-point game. And James Harden is showing that he's definitely one of the top five players in the league, or at least top five scorers in the league. He just needs some more uh, pieces to take the Rockets over the top. Yeah, they have Chris Paul, but Chris Paul to me I think Chris Paul is. Let me go ahead and look up his exact age. I know he's in his 30s. He might be 30. Let me see. Chris Paul is 33, but he's a very old 33. He has a hamstring pull basically every other year or every year so far in these past 3 to 5 years. He's always getting injured. I definitely would not have gave him that $40 million per year. I think the Rockets would be in a better situation if they would have not gave Chris Paul that money and would have just signed some really good role players. But it is what it is. James Harden is putting the Rockets on his back, and he's definitely been showing, like I said again, why he's one of the top top five scorers in this league. He was 17 for 33 from the field, 6 for 15 from three. He did have 17 free throws. He had 18 free throws, but he made 17. Had 2 assists, 5 turnovers. But still, all in all, it was a real impressive performance from him. Nobody on his team had over 20 points. And this dude is basically 3-pointers, dribbles to the rim, and his 3-pointers are really contested. If you play 2K, this dude should have deep range deadeye on Hall of Fame the way he's being contested on his 3-pointers. His handles are crazy. His 3-point shot is crazy. Finishing at the rim is crazy. And again, with him being able to draw so many fouls when going to the goal, it's definitely helping him out a lot. But I don't really look at it as a bad thing. If you can do it, why not? I definitely don't want to see this become a thing when everybody's just getting sent to the line. But James Harden has a way of manipulating the refs and manipulating other players to get him to the line. It usually doesn't work in the playoffs, but he has to use everything he has with so little, with his Clint Capella and Chris Paul being out right now. So I definitely can't blame him for doing what he has to do. And he has the Rockets at the 5th seed in the West, and they're currently on a 7-3 in the last 10 games. And I'm so surprised that the Lakers are still in the 8th seed with LeBron being out. But he should be back soon. Moving on, Zion Williamson and Duke lost to Syracuse. Um, Syracuse is known for doing stuff like this. That zone is it's tough, especially when you're used to playing against teams who play you in man. Um, and if you have a team who can't really shoot, then that 2-3 zone can be a headache. I've seen Syracuse do this to many teams, especially in um, the NCAA playoffs. I've seen them, beat really good teams because of that zone. How much it would slow down teams. It's not as easy to score on, and Zion is not really a great shooter from three. He's really efficient down low. But when it comes to 3-point range, he's shooting 29% from three, which isn't good at all. But he is averaging 20 points for the season, which is very good. Um, but another thing that hurt them is R.J. Barrett shot 8 for 30 from three. I mean from the field. And you definitely can't have that. I like a guy who, when his shot isn't falling, he'll stay aggressive and not run from the spotlight. But at the same time, you kind of have to use your threat of as a scorer to get your teammates involved in trying to get them some easy shots. And going 8 for 30 from the field and 4 for 17 from the three definitely did not help the team at all. But he did have 9 assists, which isn't bad. He did have 16 total rebounds. It's just that Zion was much more efficient. Was 12 for 20, 1 for 5 from three. Had 10 rebounds and 35 points. He had 14 free throws and made 10. Zion is going to have to develop a shot because in the playoffs, in the college basketball playoffs, I can see a lot of teams using this scheme to where they sag off of Barrett and Zion and let them shoot and just live with the result. But if they can show some type of consistency from three, then this team is definitely going to be a headache for any and every team that they face in the playoff. Um, Overall, from the field, Duke didn't shoot really well. They were missing um, their point guard. Um, he was out with I want to say he was out with a shoulder sprain, and um, I'm trying to think of the other guy's name. I can't. Cam Reddish. He was out I think he was under the weather. I saw. So we're just gonna say he was sick. So they definitely were missing two of their top 5 players, which definitely hurt them. So I won't really count this loss as a warning sign for Duke because they were missing two of their top 5 players. But even still, you still had Barrett, you still had Zion, which is those two are better talents than pretty much um, what any other team is going to have. But on the other hand, looking at Syracuse, Tyus Battle, or I believe it's Batul, he had a monster game. He had 32 points, 7 to 7 from the free throw line. He was only 1 for 5 from three, 12 for 28 from the field. He had a monster game. And Hughes, their forward, he had 20 points, 4 for 9 from three, 7 to 15 from the field. So he got a little bit of help. And then their guard Howard, he had 16 points, 7 to 13 from the field. Great game. I love seeing close games like this. I like seeing um, the top teams getting challenged. I definitely can't wait until March Madness. It's going to be a great season.